Hello and welcome to Violet Connie Art. I am swatching today. I got a brand new palette. I actually got it quite a while ago, but I've only just set it up, and I've put all of my artist paints in here, watercolors. And the reason I bought it is, if you haven't already guessed, is I seen it and it was purple and I had to have it, and it was only really quite cheap. I think it's 17 Australian dollars, and it came with a whole heap of pans in it for free to fill up all the spaces. And I actually don't need those pans because I already had my artist watercolors in pans, so I can use those pans for my paint making. I am going to swatch it out, so I've got everything here to swatch out. I've got a mix of Daniel Smith, Winsor and Newton, and core watercolors. I think there's 3 core watercolors, and the rest are mainly Daniel Smith, I think. Let me know in the comments below what paints you have in your palette, or what would your ideal color palette be if you could choose whatever colors you wanted in it. I've actually got a lot of space in here to fit more. It came with only 36 pans and 36 spaces, but I actually have put these extra ones in along here. There was a gap here, but I've just put some sticky on the bottom and just placed them in, and I think I'm going to try and fill up most of this space. Probably not straight away because watercolors are not cheap, but anyway, so let's get swatching. So the first color I've got in here is Daniel Smith's Chinese White, and I'm just going to put it straight on, pretty concentrate I think, and let's go over the bottom here. So Chinese White is a little on the opaque side, as most white colors are in watercolor. And the next color I have is the Buff Titanium. I really love Buff Titanium. I like using it for beach scenes and anything that's really kind of quite light. It is a little bit on the opaque side, but I just love the color. It's like a beige kind of color. So let's do a bit of a gradient down here. Buff Titanium. So the next one, that Buff Titanium and the Chinese White were by Daniel Smith. This is Naples Yellow by Winsor and Newton. Another really beautiful color. For some reason I kind of like the slightly more opaque colors in watercolor as well. I was going to say the pigment numbers. So the Chinese White is PW4 by Daniel Smith, and the Buff Titanium is PW6:1. The Naples Yellow by Winsor and Newton is a PBR24 and a PW6. So a white and a brown. So next up we have a Hansa Yellow Light by Daniel Smith, and this came in the Ultimate Mixing Set, I think it's called, something like that, with the small 5mm tubes, and I've nearly run out of them, and I would like to replace them or get some colors that are similar to try some different stuff. So the pigment number for Hansa Yellow Light in the Daniel Smith is a PY3. Next up I have New Gamboge, also by Daniel Smith, and it is a PY97 and a PY110. It's a beautiful color. And it's also amazing to me how so similar pigments can differ so much across different brands, but it's good to mix them up. I do have just a dedicated Daniel Smith palette, but it's packed away. It's in my portable painter I got a while ago, so I'll use that when I'm out and about if I decide, but I often use my Cotman paints for that. So the next one is Winsor Orange, and this is by obviously Winsor and Newton, and it is a PO62. So this is Pyrrol Scarlet by Daniel Smith. It is the difference between a artist grade paint and a student grade paint in the way they activate is just incredible. I do use my Winsor & Newton Cotman set probably more than I use this artist set, but the difference is just phenomenal in the way that they reactivate and paint out, and you need so much less paint. So the Pyrrol Scarlet is a PR255. Next up we have Permanent Alizarin Crimson by Winsor & Newton. I actually got this color and did a 3-color challenge with it when I first got it. I might link to that in the card and in the description if you would like to check it out. So I don't know if I said the Alizarin Crimson is a PR 206. Next up we have Daniel Smith's Qunacridone Rose, and it's PB19. It's a magenta kind of colour. Oop, bit too much water on that one. And it's really quite beautiful. Some of these shades are really close to each other, but different enough to have their own little place on my palette. Next up is Winsor & Newton's Opera Rose. So this is a nice bright pink colour, and it's a PR 122. I'm painting this swatch card on a piece of leftover Arches paper that I had. I don't know if it's rough or cold press, but it is only, I think, 185 GSM, so it bends up quite a bit when you paint on it. Such a beautiful colour. Next up I have Potter's Pink by Winsor & Newton. I absolutely love this colour. Let's wet this one down a bit as well. I absolutely love Potter's Pink. It is just lovely. The way it granulates and just the colour in general is just gorgeous. And it's PR 233. Next up I have Permanent Mauve, and it's by Winsor & Newton, and it's a lovely granulating purple colour, which is it granulates kind of similar in the way that the Potter's Pink does, but in purple. So I am a huge fan because it's a lovely purple colour with that same gorgeous Potter's Pink granulation. And I definitely, when I run out of this colour, I will be getting more of it because I do enjoy purple, and this one's very different than any of the other purples that I have. So Permanent Mauve, you can see that there on the camera. Okay, next up I have Wisteria by Daniel Smith, and it's PW6 with PR 122. Wisteria. The next up we have a Rose of Ultramarine. This is also by Daniel Smith, and it's PB29 and PV19, and it is absolutely gorgeous. It's kind of similar in colour to the Permanent Mauve, but when it dries it actually has like this very nice granulation to it, where you can see bits of the blue pigment and the purple pigment separate from each other. Should be a bit closer to the camera. When it dries I'll show you back again later. So next up is Dioxazine Purple. Now this is one's by Core, and this was an accident buy. So I didn't realise, and now I know that you've got to check these pigment numbers, that Dioxazine Purple is the same as the Carbazole Violet by Daniel Smith. And so now I have two PV23s, but the reason I'm keeping it on my palette is because it is a slightly different tone than is the Daniel Smith Dioxazine Violet. It seems to be a little bit lighter, but it also flows across the page differently than what Daniel Smith does. So that's a PV23, and here comes the Carbazole Violet, which is a PV23, which is Daniel Smith's version of the Dioxazine Purple. And you can see that they are pretty much the same colour. I will never be short of this colour. Well, not for a while anyway. Lucky I like it so much. It's probably one of my favourite purple colours. Really gorgeous. So that one there is a Carbazole Violet. Okay, next up is Cerulean Blue by Winsor & Newton, and it's PB35. It's a lovely light blue colour. Definitely nice to have on my palette. One of my newer colours again that I used in the 3 colour challenge on one of my other videos, which I linked. This one, Cerulean Blue, Opera Rose and Alizarin Crimson all together. Next up I have the Lavender which it says lavender, which is kind of a purple, but to me it looks more like a blue. It's PW6 with PB29, which is basically the French ultramarine mixed with a white, so it's slightly opaque, and very pretty, I do think. It's by Daniel Smith as well. Oh, it also has a little bit of PB15 in it, which gives it a slight purple tone, but it still looks more blue to me. What do you think? Next up, I have the French Ultramarine by Daniel Smith, a very highly granulating colour, this one. Move the colour down. PB29 is French Ultramarine. Up next we have Phthalo Blue. So Phthalo Blue is PB15:3. So vibrant. Put some of that down. It's gorgeous. I have the Phthalo Blue is by Daniel Smith. The next up I have Phthalo Turquoise, and it's by Winsor & Newton. It's a PB16. I'm getting close to the end of this swatching now. So next up I have Winsor Green by Blue Shade by Winsor & Newton. I actually use this colour a lot. I really like it, particularly when I'm painting landscapes or something that's got trees and shrubbery and bushes and things in it. It's really quite vibrant. Usually tone it down a little with another colour. It's a PG7, very lovely. Next up I have Hooker's Green by Daniel Smith. Now the reason I got Hooker's Green was because I looked at Sap Green and Hooker's Green and the difference in price at the time, and so I went with Hooker's Green because it was cheaper and as similar in colour to a Sap Green as I could get. And this is a big combination of pigments in this one. I think it has the most pigment combination of all my colours. It is a PG36, a PY3, a PO48 and a PY150. So a lot of pigments in there that make up Hooker's Green. Okay, next up we have Serpentine Genuine. This is the Primatex series of Daniel Smith. I only have one of these. It's fun to play with. They don't reactivate, well, this one, I can only go off this one because it's the only one I've got. They don't reactivate quite as well as the other Daniel Smith paints, but they're still okay. So it's a really nice kind of muted green tone, really close to a olive green, which is up next. And I don't have a pigment for this one, a pigment number for this one, because it's made out of gemstones and things, minerals, things like that, I think. This is what we're up to so far. Next up I have the Olive Green by Winsor & Newton. I really like this colour, but do you see how close in colour it is to the Serpentine Genuine, Olive Green and Serpentine Genuine. And the Olive Green by Winsor & Newton that I have here is a PY65, a PB15:6 and a PR104. Very nice. So far so good. I haven't actually put any paints in the wrong spot on this chart. And the last time I did a chart I accidentally switched two of the pans around, and yeah, I accidentally painted them in the wrong spot, but a couple of little arrows helps with that. So next up I have Daniel Smith's Yellow Ochre, a staple of any palette and something that I use very regularly. And this Yellow Ochre by Daniel Smith is a PY43. Next up we have Gold Ochre by Winsor & Newton. It is a PY42. Let me see them. Next up I have the Qunacridone Gold, and it's by Daniel Smith, and it's PO48 and PY150. And I know that just before I bought my first tube of Qunacridone Gold that they went out of stock, and of the original pigment. So this is the new combination of the Qunacridone Gold, and I know there was a lot of people that were complaining that it wasn't as good, but I've never known any different, and I absolutely adore this color. I use it a lot in my paintings of animals, big cats, foxes and things. It's a perfect color for animal fur, and particularly in combination with, say, a burnt sienna or a sepia as well. Next up I have a light red, and it's by Winsor & Newton, and it's a PR 104. It's an earthy tone. Next up is Pyrrol Violet. Now, I know this is a violet color, but I think it's also an earth tone, and it doesn't look particularly purple to me. A little bit, but looks more like a maroon or a red in my opinion. It's a beautiful vibrant color though, and it's a PV29, and I do want to try and use it a little more. I don't think I've used it very much. You can't see because of the light there, but look at that gorgeous color, absolutely fabulous. Okay, next up we have a burnt sienna. It's a very brown burnt sienna, and in some brands it can be a bit more red, particularly in the Winsor & Newton Cotman range. It's a little bit more red than this. And this burnt sienna is a PBR7. Did I say by Daniel Smith? It's by Daniel Smith. Next up I have Van Dyke Brown, and this is by Core. It is a gorgeous dark deep brown. Van Dyke Brown is PR 101. Next up I have Sepia, and I use a lot of this color as well, and it's by Winsor & Newton, and it is PBK6 and PR 101. And I adore how dark this brown can be, and also how light it can be. I think it's a really nice tone. When I think of colors, I actually think that browns and neutral tones are my next favorite next to purple. I absolutely love them, and I love how earthy and beautiful they can look. They just make me happy. Also, there are a lot of the colors that I use when I do my animal paintings, which I guess just follows that I will like them when I am painting with them regularly. Next up is Shadow Violet by Daniel Smith. Now, this is more of a neutral tint kind of color. It does have a slight purplish hue, but it's more of a warm grey, I think. And it's PO73, which is an orange pigment, which is interesting, a PB29, a PG18, which is a green pigment. So very interesting little color combo for a violet color. Very nice though, and I think it has some really sweet granulation. Next up is Davies Grey. I do like this on my palette. It kind of goes hand in hand with my buff titanium, I think. I like to use those together in combination because they're a nice light color together. And this one is by Winsor & Newton, and it's PBK19 and PG17. Very nice light grey colour. Next up I have Moon Glow by Daniel Smith. Now, I do really like the colour in this. It is a very purplish toned neutral colour, and it is very pretty. It's got some awesome granulation to it, and I think that I've seen quite a lot of people on Instagram using Moon Glow as a one-off colour to paint a monochrome piece, and they just look beautiful, and I have been meaning to get around to doing one of those. So this one's dyed by Daniel Smith with the PG18, a PB29 and a PR177. Next up is Indigo. Now, Indigo is by Winsor & Newton, the one that I have, and it is a PBK6, a PV19 and a PB15. So it has a violet tone in there as well. I also love how absolutely dark this can go, as well as how light it can be. It's a beautiful blue colour. And I've got it down with my neutral colours as I use it to mute tones and use it as shadows and things. So that's why these colours are down the bottom here. Try and give it some order to what I'm reaching for. Next up is a neutral tint, and this one is by Core, and it is a PY42 and a PR122 and a PB15:3, and it is a kind of a blue toned neutral colour. Do like this neutral tint. I use it a lot in my paintings as a nice light grey that's kind of different to Davy's grey. And the last colour here, which I'm not a huge fan of, it's Daniel Smith's Lunar Black, and it's a PBK11, and it granulates really quite heavily. It's a beautiful colour, but I'm not going to use, well, I don't tend to use a black much, and when I do, I would have preferred to use a black that I have a little bit more control over, that doesn't granulate quite as heavily. So when I got this, I was actually a little disappointed that it granulates so heavily like it does. But I might try and find a way to use this tube up, because once I've used it, I don't think I'm going to buy it again. But yeah, it's nice to try different pigments. If you've got an idea of a black, an artist grade black that you use that doesn't granulate, let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear your suggestions. So get a little close-up look of my palette here. So these are all the colours. Some of these bottom ones are still yet to dry, but you can kind of get the idea. Here's the Rose of Ultramarine that I was going to show you. The granulation in that, you can kind of see it there. How it got bits of speckles of blue in it. And the granulation of this permanent mauve next to the potter's pink, the purple and the pink, they granulate in a similar way, and I think they're really quite beautiful. So yeah, there's a little close-up of all of my colours that I have on my palette. Some I use a lot more than others, and I'm always looking to expand when my budget allows me to. So now I can keep that. I've got all these spaces to fill. That's me being hopeful. So I absolutely adore this nice new palette. It has got lots of mixing space to use, and I'm very happy with that. It's even got this, it was said it had a ceramic tray, but this feels very plastic to me, which is probably good because it didn't break in shipping. But yes, I am in love with this new palette. I cannot wait to use it some more. I won't pop that in there just yet, and I am so pleased that it's purple. It matches my desk. So yeah, I'm going to be painting with this from now on. So yeah, I'm very, very happy with it. Let me know what your favorite colors are to use, whether it be watercolor or markers or whatever art medium that you use. I would love to hear about what your favorite colors are. Mine, of course, is purple. And yeah, leave that in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.